In progress.
All right, very good. Thank you everyone for showing up to tonight's meeting. I want to go ahead and call it to order. It is 6 o'clock. And we'll begin with the roll call. Counselor Hall. Use that. You want to do the
Can I go stuff right now?
right? You want to do the roll call?
Let's go, Bill. Here. Mr. Evans.
Here.
Mr. Kirsch.
Aye.
Mr. Nielsen.
Here.
Mr. Woodward and Mr. Morones are not present, and I am Janet Ziahal. So we have 5 for our quorum.
Okay, very good. I'd like to remind everybody of potential conflicts of interest. This is your opportunity to speak for the record. If anybody on the board has any potential conflicts, please state it at this time. If there's nothing recognized at this time, but something comes up during the meeting that could potentially be a conflict of interest, be sure and speak up at that time. Announcements. Does anybody have any announcements that they would like to make to the board or to the public? If nobody has anything there, then we will move on to public comment and question. There's opportunity for public to make any comments that they would like to have to the board. I'd like to limit everybody to 3 minutes each. Anybody in the room? Doesn't look like it. Anybody on Zoom land have any comments that they'd like to make? If not, then we
Yes,
Oh, Brian, you have your hand up.
Good
Go ahead.
evening to all of you. It's good to see you all again.
And you?
I hope you all had a good Thanksgiving, and I'll wish you Merry Christmas now before you guys move on. I was at a meeting recently regarding our Central Street adjustment. We're having some work, and there's 2 questions that came to my mind. One, there are a couple of properties that are connected to that Central Street adjustment, and I'm wondering if Peter or someone from engineering could give those residents some idea of how they might deal with their future sewer connection based on the way that road is going to be torn up. I hope that's not too obtuse of a question, but it seems like they might be able to put in a connector pipe while the road is torn up now to prevent the new work that's going to be done this spring and into the summer to be dug up down the road. Which
yeah, I was gonna say, I can understand that. I know it seems like every time you put in or pave a new street, first thing you want to do is make a cut across it. So I appreciate that, and potentially we would have to ask Peter that if things like that are going to go into his plans, but I don't think he's that far along with his plans yet. I'd have to check with him. Chris, you were nodding your head.
Mr. Chair, I can speak to that during the county's update.
Okay, the county's gonna speak to it during their update.
great, I appreciate that. The second part, and I see Mayor Evans is there. Good to see you, Ron. Is I would hope that the city could get an understanding of the scope of work that is going to be done on the streets and gates. The streets and gates aren't in great shape right now. Some are better than others, but it seems that this is going to be rather disruptive to the infrastructure of the city of Gates, their streets. And I've heard no discussion at city council or really kind of understand the scope of the work that's going to be done in putting in lines and the lateral lines, I guess is what you would call them, from each lot to the gravity feed lines or the pressurized lines. So we're a community of limited resources, and it would be best for us to get ahead of the game a little bit to see if we need additional resources to make sure that our streets don't end up just a bunch of patchwork of this and that and the other, because frankly, they're currently that way in a lot of spots.
That's very good, constructive criticism and forward thinking. I appreciate that because I remember the days when Mill City put in their collection system and tore up a lot of streets and stuff. So yeah, there will be some, street patching that needs to be done. I can assume as well. So I don't know the answer to that yet, but definitely something we should be keeping aware of and on our forward thinking too. So thank you for bringing that to our attention.
I appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you. Public comments and questions. Anybody have anything that they would like to bring before the board? This is your opportunity. Anybody else out there in the Zoom world that has something that they would like to bring to our attention? Doesn't look like it. Very good then. Moving right along, we're gonna go to old business. We have the summary notes. I asked the board if they've had an opportunity to review summary notes at all. Is something that we would like to pass for record. Anybody have any questions, comments?
I move that we accept them.
Been moved by Ron to accept the summary notes,
Second.
and it's been seconded by Denny. Can we get a roll call vote on that, please, Janet? Just
Ms. Schofield. Aye. Mr. Evans. Mr. Kirsch.
aye.
Mr. Nielsen.
Aye.
And myself, Jen Seinfeld. Passes.
All right, treasurer's report. We do have a paper copy here in-house, but if board members should have that treasurer's report also available to them. Anybody have any questions on the treasurer's report? Ron, any comments you'd like to make since you've submitted it?
The one I have to make is on wix.com. We couldn't get a paper invoice from them, so I had to pay with my personal credit card again and then pay myself from write a check. So you'll see a check in there. The $324 that for the Wix invoice is actually to me.
Okay. Couldn't get a paper invoice. Okay. So did everybody hear what Ron said happens there? Any questions on it?
I make a motion to approve the treasury report.
It's been moved to approve treasury report by board member Hall
I'll second that.
and been seconded by board member Schofield. Could we get a
Ms. Schofield. Aye. Mr. Evans.
Aye.
Mr. Kirsch.
aye?
Mr. Nielsen.
Aye.
And myself, Janet, aye, and it passes.
All right, very nice. On to new business. We do
Excuse
have-
me, Mr. Chair.
Yeah.
I just received a call from Ken Woodward, who's needs to be let into the meeting.
Yeah, and I have not seen him in here in the waiting room or anything.
Okay, well, he thinks he
Is
is. He just
Is
called.
his? Okay,
Oh, maybe he's that.
maybe he's that. Hold on a second. Hold on a second.
That's what he has.
I think that's what he has his nameplate as. Now let's ask, Ken, are you there?
Wow,
There he is.
this is amazing how don't even get me started.
Sorry about that, Ken. I thought you were us, because we
Yeah,
name your.
I know, I've been signing in this way for ever.
Yeah, sorry about that. Didn't see you.
Aha,
There he was.
so for the record, Ken Woodward is with us.
Yeah.
And has been waiting to be with us for a long time. Sorry, Ken.
Yeah,
Thank you for your patience.
yeah,
We are down to new business at this moment. And so that being first, we're gonna talk about our meeting dates coming up here in January. Since the first Monday of January is New Year's Day, I personally will not be available. I'm also out of state on the 8th, which is the second Monday.
And I'm out,
So, with that,
I'm out of state on the 8th also.
and Board Member Hall is out of state also on the 8th. So we gotta figure out what we wanna do for January meetings. Do we wanna just wait until our 15th? Which is typically a work session.
That's a holiday.
And it's a holiday on the 15th is Martin Luther King Day. My goodness, okay, another holiday. We could possibly potentially move them to Tuesdays. How does people feel about Tuesday the 2nd? Tuesdays or
On the second Tuesday, that's the council meeting in Detroit.
right?
I'm usually busy on Tuesdays,
Tuesdays, the first Tuesday,
all Tuesdays.
all Tuesdays.
Yeah, that thing on regular on Tuesdays, the evenings.
Okay,
Wednesday be fine.
Wednesdays are fine for Board Member Evans. How do Wednesdays work for people? Potentially Wednesday, the 3rd, being the first Wednesday of the month. Does that work for folks?
It works for me.
That one would work for me as well.
Works for Denny.
So I've got, so far 4 people. Works for Ron also. Ken, how does Wednesday, the 3rd look for you?
That 3rd December or February?
good.
January.
January.
January,
And
perfect.
your staff and your attorney are also filming.
Staff and attorney are available. Well, that's always nice to know. Okay.
I don't know about you guys, but.
Ken, Wednesday the 3rd, what do you think about that of January?
Hey, that's dandy.
Okay.
Dandy. So I think we'll set our first meeting then for Wednesday, the 3rd of January.
I'll have to check our flight.
And what does the Wednesday, the 17th look like for folks? For the work session. Wednesday, 17th?
Works for me.
Works for Denny.
Works for Ken.
All right, I've got a number of good head nods on that. So it looks like our meeting dates for the month of January are gonna change to the 1st and 3rd Wednesday,
6 p.m. 6 p.m.
6 p.m.
and here. I'll confirm with Stacy.
We can always have them here at the Mill City City Hall unless somebody else wants to post them somewhere else. Or you can join us online, Ken. Just a joke, not a good one, but a joke. Okay, moving right along, new business, we're gonna have our county update with Chris Einmo.
Should I sit there for the album?
Sure.
Good evening. So yes, this is the county's update on the project. We're using a new format with a lot of talking points. I won't go into all this much detail. But just wanted to make sure everybody has this to take away and see what the current state of the project is.
Thank you.
And we're gonna use this one going forward, so thank you for the suggestion.
You're welcome.
So I want to touch on Mr. Gardner's question first, make sure I address that. About the gates collection system, because this will be part of the facility plan I'm going to talk about in a moment. But we are working with the Gate Center Street project, so they've shared their plans and we've shared our alignment study. We don't have full plans yet, but we're coordinating to try to minimize impact there. Based on our current understanding, we don't expect to be in that under the pavement. We're expecting to be outside of it. So the main sewer line won't require us to cut pavement, but as we get further along, we're going to continue to look at that because the last thing we want to do is to go in and disturb new pavement.
Part of that project is sidewalk, so that,
Yes.
that might make it easy.
Yes, most likely we expect to be outside of it, but if we are going to be in, we'll try to make sure we're sensitive to that, look at solutions.
Yep.
I can, just like a lot of doing city infrastructure, it's never a good idea to put in a sewer under new pavement. So that leads me to the second question, which is in general about the sewer lines for the Gates collection system. What do we anticipate in terms of pavement disturbance? So we actually have quite a bit of work ahead of ourselves to do surveying, utility location and so forth, before we determine where those sewer lines are going to. But generally speaking, we tend to put gravity collection systems under the pavement where they're protected. And that does involve a big trench cut and repair. Sometimes if it's near the side, we'll simply take that all the way to the sidewalk, just so we're not leaving two lines. It all depends. But what I can tell you is typically when we've done a lot of urban construction, and what I've done in previous places is we've tried to coordinate with the Public Works Department to find out, what is make sure that they know where those sewer projects are coming in. And then we try to coordinate so that we're not, basically there's a strategy to, if you have pavement replacement projects, you tend to target those after the sewer is done. Because once the sewer is done, you want to put it in and leave it and have it do its job for a long time. So Gates is somewhat unique situation. I know you don't have any major repaving projects kind of planned out, but we want to make sure the city is aware of the sequence and the alignment where we think that sewer is going to be. As soon as we know a little more, we want to be able to share that so that the city of Gates can plan accordingly. Also, those are putting in sewer lines are big visible projects in the public right of way.
Once you have your engineering done, so we know where it's going to, we can address that in a little more detail.
Exactly. And part of our discussions early on, even at this onset of selection, was talking about what those impacts are going to be on people. How can we make sure, for example, we're keeping at least one driveway open for all commercial properties, making sure everybody has access, and then staying way ahead of construction to minimize impacts to traffic on the city. So I think that's a great point to bring up. Our primary strategy is going to be communication. So just moving on to more the facility plan in general, the Gates collection system is part of that. So we are getting ready to submit the facility plan to DEQ. That's a major step in the permitting. In advance of that, we've already submitted 2 technical memos. Both of those have to do with the, in general, the rapid infiltration basin in Mill City and our strategy for getting rid of the effluent that's generated by the plant. So we're going to be meeting with DEQ to talk about that a little bit. We're extremely grateful for DEQ as a partner helping us through the permitting process. And we are coming up on the first major challenge with the project, which is the permittability of the treatment plant. So and just an update to what's noted here. I did receive the facility plan draft from Keller, the final one. So that's in our court to review and submit to DEQ in the next couple of weeks.
Has your location been final now? Is it for sure?
Well, that's part of this permitting process is to get their approval. So
But
the facility plan does show, yes, so facility plan does show that location by the log pond. The same as what we showed in the open house, shows a detailed site concept layout. And that's what we are using, all of the data that we collected from all that work GSI did to demonstrate and model how the groundwater is receiving the effluent. So that we will, as DEQ goes through the review process, we will know the permittability of the project soon. So it's been a lot of work to get to this point, and in relation to that, I've mentioned before about, the Maui decision. There's kind of with absent EPA guidance, we were working towards that. In a perfect world, of course, we would have waited, but we are in a project with aggressive timelines, so we could not wait. The EPA released that technical guidance last week, and that's now on their public website. So that will help us to inform, and it will help to inform DEQ as well on what the requirements will be for this WPCF permitting process. In addition to this being the real acid test for the plant in Mill City, this will also help us to inform the facility plan for Detroit, Indiana as well. Since we are essentially using the same concept of a rapid infiltration basin for both systems. Update on the Detroit, Indiana. We've installed monitoring wells at the McCoy site. So this is the same process we use to gather all this data for the Mill City rapid infiltration basin. By the way, can I continue to use the acronym McRib? Everybody's advertising a project now, so I kind of want to.
Oh, gross.
So. I didn't realize that they both would have the same acronym, but for that McCoy rib site, we're installing our monitoring wells, doing our slug test. That's just putting basically a test slug of a tracer down the well and putting those transducers in there, so we're actually getting data on where is the aquifer monitoring and go up and down. So all that's going to help us with our developing a computer model for that site. And then we would use that as the basis for our facility plan and the permitting process for Detroit, Indiana. Also as our secondary site, Detroit Ranger Station, we've done test pits and gotten some shallow samples there. Monitoring wells will be as needed. We're going to look at the data from the McCoy site first. Meanwhile, a lot has been happening in downtown Detroit. Those of you up there may have seen crews working. We've been doing our field data collection for the commercial septic sites. So in the meantime, while we're getting the main wastewater plant permitted, we're doing the septic grant process as the interim solution for Detroit. And what we've been doing is collecting just as much data as we can to fill in the gaps on all of those commercial properties. So that means really what we've encountered a lot of is just, as I think everyone here has heard before, that they lost records in the fires. A lot of infrastructure was just damaged. So it's difficult to design and permit under a repair if we don't know exactly what's there. So we've had crews going with cameras, staking cameras down the lines. We've been doing like site assessments, and we've done a couple of site evaluations as well. That's where we actually dig test pits and evaluate the soils to determine if that can be served by a drain field, and if so, how big is that drain field? So all that's been happening. They've probably seen the mini excavators out there digging pits on a few commercial properties. So that's what's been happening there. I kind of listed a few of the sites out there that we've done so far. We're at a point now where we're ready to start going on to more commercial properties in Detroit. In order to do that, we need everyone to take the first step, which is the grant application. So we will do another round of outreach. We've already established contacts, so we have lines of communication now. We just, if people want to benefit from the grant program, which we want everybody to benefit, we need to get their grant applications in so that we can get on the sites and do the field collection so that we can design and then help them get a commercial septic in place. So, right now, we're kind of at the point where our consultant is going to be doing design work that'll take us through, late December, hopefully starting to get those permit applications in. And then early spring, as soon as it thaws, we'd like to start doing more test pits. So that's our strategy, is between now and then, just try to keep reaching out to move all the commercial properties along the process. In addition to all of the other commercial properties, we kind of had one that was unique because it was next to a proposed lift station, and that's the Canes Marina. There was the master plan calls for a lift station called Cluster Road Lift Station as part of the future sewer. And so the strategy there was to build that wet well, basically build out part of the lift station and let that serve as acting as kind of a big holding tank for the site. So we've been going through the process of designing and permitting that. But we just did the site evaluation. We're waiting for the results there to see if in fact there is any alternative with the drain field or if it needs to be a holding tank. And Keller's produced 30% plans, and our contractor has then done some of the cost estimating for that. So our next step is to try to get that fully designed and see what that's going to look like. Chances are that the biggest part of it's going to be building a private sewer system on the site. And regardless of what we get from the site evaluation process, the sewer system that we build for them is still going to look the same. It just needs to provide hookups and a central sewer line. So we're going to keep working ahead on the design of that piece while we look at the permitting side on all the other stuff. And as we're looking at this, we're also getting more information about, what that collection system looks like, because some of the other bigger properties up in Detroit, they're all going to need their own little collection system, even if it's just a little bit of plumbing or connecting a small number of RVs. So this is kind of what we're doing now is repeatable for some of the other properties that have more than one connection. This happens to be the biggest one, and we're tackling it first. Looking ahead, to mention, we're gonna take that Lester Road lift station design further along. We are having a meeting with the COG Staff, in preparation for our facility plan submittal, and looking at getting that submitted second or third week in December is our target. Meanwhile, we have a row of properties in downtown Detroit that are kind of along 22. It's a big part of their commercial quarter. And we're trying to get into 22 along that right of way and do all the collection we need, doing the surveying, getting corners, doing the environmental clearance. It's a process we need to do in order to actually get the state, before we can make a formal request for the state to essentially donate the surplus right away to use for septic drain fields. We need to collect all this information first and make it a part of the application. So you may see additional crews working along 22 in the next month. That's what that's all about. And it's kind of right along there along 22 between starting with the old Cedars and then running east from there out to just a little bit past Forest Road. So that's where you may see crews doing either survey, archaeologists maybe doing some pits, just doing data collection.
Chris.
Okay, another question?
Hey, Chris, you mentioned surveys. when will the surveys of the business properties begin so that we can establish corners for those properties to begin to understand where that opportunity between Highway 22 and the private property, where it is in terms of location, but more importantly, the scope in terms of square footage, or 30 by 100 or 200 or 300 feet?
Yeah, so, two answers, great question. One answer is we will be surveying the properties themselves, starting in the next couple of weeks. I just had a coordination meeting with the surveyor today, actually, so getting out there and picking up the corners on the properties themselves can happen pretty soon. Before we can go in and survey in the ODOT right away, there's actually a permit for them to go in and survey. It's a pretty simple permit. As soon as we have that, we can go and survey along 22 itself. So we will be surveying starting probably early next week. I think we'll start surveying on the properties themselves, and then it may only take us a week or two to get this permit from ODOT, and then they can actually go out and survey that proposed easement area along the south side of 22. Make sense?
Thank you.
Welcome. Yeah, so other work that's ahead, as I mentioned, we're actually going to try and get some of our first permit applications in over the next month for the commercial septic systems. All right, and we also have, I mentioned this clearing and test pits of the alignment. So I want to make sure the board is aware. I think we probably won't do that until we meet again, but just so you're aware, we've already executed a contract amendment for Slade Constructors to come out and clear that proposed sewer main alignment. So that's good to go, but we're holding off until we have all the permits in hand and everything we need from Keller, because it's kind of a joint effort between the engineers and the contractors to clear it, dig the test pits, and then bring in the survey and geotech to go in and get the information they need. So right now, we're thinking that might happen in mid-January. Of course, if the permits come back very quickly, everything's good to go. And if the weather is cooperative, we may do it sooner. I know the Floridian here talking about, oh, the weather in December is going to be great, I'm sure.
3 inches of rain so far.
At least a 12 back home. Careful what you wish for, Chris. So once that happens, I mean, it's going to be a fairly visible project, and we want to make sure we've done plenty of outreach ahead of time, because clearing that alignment is definitely going to be noticed by all the traffic along 22. But essentially, it's no more complex than just mowing it, removing the vegetation, and then essentially digging like a 3 to 4 foot pit, about every 300 feet, so they're a couple every block. And the reason for that is basically a preview of what our actual sewer pipeline trench is going to look like. So the engineer, the contractor, everybody will have a good snapshot of what's underground. We can really mitigate any unforeseen, unknown risks below the surface. So again, I don't expect that until we meet again, but just in case everything aligns and we decide for some reason we're moving ahead faster, we'll be sure to follow that up with additional communication to this board. But right now, my thoughts are somewhere around the last couple weeks of January. But again, weather permitting. And then we are just trying to get our last contract amendment out. So that includes, of course, moving along on design. So with the next contract amendment, we will actually be able to get onto the site of our wastewater treatment plant and do the ground survey, do the topo, the geotechnical work, start to create our base maps. And additionally, we're going to do some pilot testing of the McRib. So, yeah, I'm not gonna stop using that.
It's magical that they both ended up being named McRib. You gotta use it.
That was not the basis of our site selection class. So the pilot testing is actually going to be simulating a discharge from the wastewater plant and putting that into the location of the proposed infiltration basin. And it's sort of proving up the computer models by like one big batch of discharge. So that'll we'll see how that kind of impacts the monitoring wells that we already have in place. And it'll just serve to help us validate the model. So we're coordinating with Mill City now on that. And then with the, then we're also bringing in public affairs support. The consultant was kind enough to help me prepare this one. He's not under contract yet, but we'll be having our MIG is a firm that does a lot of planning and public affairs, and so they'll help us support and also help me keep on top of all the communication. I know there's a lot.
Nice.
With that, I know that was a lot of detail, and I will be working to streamline that detail as we move ahead next year. But I'll pause for any questions before I move back.
All right, you can actually put more in there, it's fine.
So real quickly, we'll call for any questions from the board. Anybody have any further questions that they'd like to ask Chris on any of his reports?
Yeah, Chris, when is the contract with MIG? When is that set to start?
I've received the draft amendment.
Okay.
I need to get through it, then we need to get it through our contracting process, which can take a month or more.
Okay.
So I would love to try and get it through in December.
Okay.
Board sessions around Christmas are a tricky thing to schedule as well.
Thank you.
Any other questions from the board for Chris? Anybody out there in Zoom world? On board, anybody in the general public have any questions that they'd like to ask Marion County about their report here today? Seeing none, we'll move right along. Thank you, Chris, for all your hard work and your report there. Moving right along for our COG staff report.
So the COG has been focused on aligning the tools that you're going to be needing to start making some important decisions in the new year. So the first thing that we've been working on, of course, is bringing on the attorneys Cable Houston. You'll recall in your November meetings, at your regular board meeting, you allocated budget out of your current budget, out of your managerial category to provide for legal services. We worked on the representation agreement, Chair Kirsch signed that, and then the county, of course, is going to try to, or is going to provide funding for those legal services. That requires an IGA, and so staff have been meeting with county staff and working through the process of crafting a revised IGA that would, of course, come to you before it was entered into, because you'll have to sign off on it. So that's that. The other piece that we were working on is the communication coordination. So Keller's subcontractor MIG, that scope of work also includes providing additional technical communication support to this body. County was kind enough to include us in that scope of work. So if you have ideas for outreach, please let me know, because we are in the process of creating that scope of work now. The scope of work is 4 pages long right now and pretty detailed. So, but bring the kitchen sink if you have it. So we'll get it in there, or I'll ask the county to include it. For those that don't know, COG staff maintain that website. We're going to get some help from MIG on creating more content, but if you have content or suggestions for that website, go ahead and let me know. Thank you to Denny, letting me know that a citizen had reached out to him with a specific request for some information to be put on the website. We're happy to do that. So, thank you for letting us know. And if you hear that from your constituents, please let us know. We're happy to do that. Also working to provide some response to media as requested with Chair Kirsch. All of you have seen those responses. And so we'll continue to do with that. And that is our update for November. And I can introduce, or you can take into the attorneys if you like.
Go right ahead.
Okay. So it's my pleasure to introduce Tommy Brooks to you in person with Cable Houston. And is Clark on? Did we get Clark on? Oh, there he is. Yeah. So we're not in executive session yet, but just wanted everybody to know that Tommy did make the trip, and then Clark is here as well. If you want to, if there's any questions for me and for the staff report, happy to take those now.
Okay, board, if anybody has any questions for Laura, this is your opportunity. Anybody on the board have any questions? Anybody out there in the community have any questions? Seeing nothing, then is that gonna do it then?
Yes, for the COG staff report.
For the COG staff report, okay, very good.
That's it.
That's mostly everything on our agenda for this evening. I have one thing that I would like to address, and that is Denny had sent me an email asking about spending limits on the 2,500.
That was me, actually.
Well, that was you. It was under Denny's
Well, that
email.
one-
Oh, the communications were.
Yeah, that all the.
Okay, that was Ron who sent that. It was my impression of looking through things that everything that you spent was stuff that we had already approved to be spent.
It's called in. Now, maybe that's, okay, maybe that's the case.
Yeah,
So we pre-approved the payments to call, so that.
right. So we'd already pre-approved all those items. So the $2,500, I mean,
Doesn't apply.
we're safe there and didn't apply to any of that. I would say the $300 one that you did to the Wicks. Although I believe we approved
We talked
to
about.
spend that one as well, would have been one that I think that you could have gone ahead and done. Ron had questions about, because he just wrote a couple of, substantial
Some of the
checks.
invoices,
$3,000-4,000.
I've got up to $8,000, so.
Yeah, I have to look at your financial policy because those were all budgeted, right? So they're in your, I think that policy speaks to, if it's $2,500 or more and not already, budgeted, then, but I can look at that and get back to you again.
Yeah, that's kind of what it read to me as well, but good of you to ask the question to make sure that you're within our spending policies, and we certainly appreciate that. So, as well as all the work you're doing there with the treasury. Thank you very much. With that, that pretty much covers everything that we had in our regular meeting. I would like to announce that we do have an executive session that we're going to meet in accordance with ORS 192.660 subset 2 subset F to consider information or records that are exempt from disclosure by law, including written advice from our attorney, ORS 192.660 subset 2 subset F. So I'd like to remind everyone that executive sessions are closed to the public, and all members of the audience are going to be asked to leave the room. And for those attending virtually, we'll place you in the waiting room. Representatives of the news media and designated staff may attend executive sessions. Representatives of the news media are specifically directed not to report on any of the deliberations during the executive session. I would like to also state that no decision may be made in executive session. At the end of the executive session, we will return to open session and welcome the audience back into the room. Do we want to invite county staff to be here, but not necessarily that you attend, I'm sure. Thank you very much. We'll be chatting soon.
You want to state the time?
The time that we are exiting our regular session is looks like 6:45. And in just a moment, we will open into an executive session.
Okay, let's touch it.
Was that?
Oh, council is asking a really good question that we haven't had to think about or present to the board before, which is whether we would record executive session. Do you want to give your advice?
Sure.
Please give your advice since you're the attorney.
I think I'm gonna sit here for the rest of it anyway.
I know typically city council, we do record our executive sessions, but
This is, everyone does it a little bit differently,
right?
and, you know, there's no requirement that you record your meetings at all. To do that, having administrative ease, it makes it easier to keep the minutes.
Is that okay?
Sometimes
Everybody,
you can-
has everybody been put in a room? We have,
Not yet. Doing that now.
We're not in our executive session yet,
He's never put people into the waiting room.
we're figuring out about recording or not.
Just give us a second.
I will wait, wouldn't say.
Do we want to record our executive session or not?
Well, this would be the part where he's advising you, so I would say,
Ah.
hang on. I don't want him to advise you yet. We have to put people into
Is the
the,
county staff staying here?
no.
No, okay.
So I think Mr. Floyd is the only member of the media, so he is allowed to stay.
and Keith Bedell, there you go.
And then we will have to stop recording.
Okay, I've got Epping and Keith. I don't have anybody else in.
I
Okay,
think that's right.
all right. And then let me check my chat one more time. Okay, that's the press asking if they could stay in. They're
Yes.
in and then stop recording.
Yes.
Okay.
Oh, about 6 minutes to 8.
7:54.
Everybody's gone?
Everybody's in.
Okay, everybody that wants in, I'm going to open our regular board meeting to say that we held our executive session and discussed a bunch of stuff with our attorneys. And we made no decisions. But however, I want to make sure that everybody that's out there listening is aware that our next meeting will be on the 18th, and everybody's welcome to listen into that one as well. So we will adjourn from our regular meeting once again. Say thank you, everyone, for all your time.
And I'll change my